Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of sources and really get into them. Today, we're looking at excerpts from MCS Ezra Chapter 2.
Right, and Ezra 2, it can seem pretty dry at first glance. Just a long, long list.
Exactly. And that's our mission today, to unpack this list, find the meaning hidden in the names and numbers, why include this level of detail, what's it really telling us. Let's find out.
Okay, so context first. Chapter 1, King Cyrus says, go back, rebuild the temple. But Chapter 2, that's the reality check. It shows who actually did go back.
And the source points out not everyone authorized actually went, right?
That's right. Permission granted, but it was still a choice.
Right.
And this group, this was the first wave.
The first of three.
First of three, yeah. And this first return was led by Zerubbabel. He was the political leader, the
governor of Judah for Persia.
Yeah.
And his background, grandson of King Jehoiachin. That's quite a connection.
It is. Ties him right back to the Davidic line. He's even in Matthew's genealogy of Jesus.
Matthew 1.13. So political clout and historical significance.
Absolutely. And you see other leaders listed too. Yeshua, the high priest, Nehemiah, Sariah, key figures. But the main event of the chapter, like you said, is the list itself.
This incredibly detailed list. How's it organized?
Well, the source shows it's mainly two ways. First, by family lines, the descendants.
Okay, clans.
Clans, exactly. And second, by their job, their function or service role.
So you get these family names almost like census data from way back. Give us some examples.
Sure. You've got the descendants of Parash, 2,172 people. That's a big group.
Yeah.
Then Shphatia, 372. Iraq, 775. Pashat Moav, another large one, 2,812.
And it even breaks it down by location sometimes, like people from specific towns.
It does. You see Beit Lechem, Bethlehem, sending 123. Then Tophah, 56 people. Anatot, 128. It really gives you a sense of them gathering from all over.
A real coming together.
Definitely paints a picture. Then after the families, it switches to the service groups. The Kohanim, the priests, listed by their specific priestly families.
Like Yodaya, Immer, Pashur, those names.
Right. And the Liviums, the Levites, they're in there too. Then the specialized roles.
Singers, gatekeepers, temple servants.
Exactly. Singers from Asaph's line, 128 of them. Gatekeepers, like Shallum's and Ader's descendants, 139. And then, the temple servants, which also included descendants of Solomon's servants, that's 392 combined.
It's so precise. Which brings us back to the big question, why? Why this massive, detailed roster? What's the deeper significance the source points to?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The source suggests this isn't just record keeping. It's deeply encouraging because it shows God knows every single person by name.
So in this huge undertaking, nobody's anonymous. Every person counted.
Every person counted. You matter enough to be named. That's one key insight.
It's quite personal. What else?
The divisions. Priests, Levites, singers, gatekeepers. The source suggests this structure might even be a kind of picture, maybe foreshadowing the idea of judgment based on service, like we see in Revelation.
So God knows who you are, and he also sees how you served him.
That seems to be the implication. Identity and contribution. Both noted.
Okay, that definitely adds weight to the list. It's not just names, it's lives and roles.
Exactly. And that theme of identity and service becomes even clearer, maybe sharper, when we look at a specific group mentioned.
The ones who couldn't prove who they were.
Yeah, those folks.
Yeah.
People from places like Tel Malach, Tel Harsha, they couldn't trace their lineage back to Israelite fathers' clans.
And some priestly descendants, too.
Yes, descendants of Haviah, Hakatz, Barzillai. They couldn't find their genealogical records.
And in that society, that was a major problem, especially for priests.
Huge problem. The source says because they couldn't provide proof, especially the priestly lines couldn't trace back to Levi, they were considered defiled for service.
Defiled. So what did that mean practically?
It meant they were barred from serving as priests, and they couldn't eat the very holy food, the portion set aside for the priests from temple offerings.
Wow. Excluded from their role and its provisions. Was that it for them? No way back?
Well, the text says their situation was basically put on hold. They were excluded until a priest could consult the Urim and Thummim.
Those objects used to discern God's will.
Right. They needed a direct word from God through that specific channel to clarify their status. Their future hung in the balance, waiting for that divine ruling.
That really highlights how critical lineage and, external validation were back then. And the source makes a contrast here, doesn't it?
A really significant one. It contrasts that situation needing physical proof, needing special objects to know God's will with the situation for believers today.
Which is?
That through Christ, the idea is all believers are part of a spiritual priesthood, and access to God's will comes directly through the Holy Spirit living inside you.
So it shifts from external qualifications and specific rituals to an internal spirit-led connection.
That's the perspective offered. A fundamental change in access and relationship. No longer dependent on proving your family tree or having specific artifacts.
That's a profound difference. Okay, so after dealing with these identity issues, the chapter sums up the numbers for everyone who returned.
It does. The total for the main assembly was 42,360 people.
42,360.
But, and this is important, the source notes that number didn't include their male and female slaves.
How many were there?
Another 7,337.
Okay.
And it also didn't include the 200 male and female singers who were counted separately earlier.
So add those in. We're talking close to 50,000 people making this journey.
Roughly, yeah. It was a massive undertaking. A whole community on the move.
And they brought animals too, right? The list includes livestock.
Oh, yeah. Practical necessities. 736 horses, 245 mules, 435 camels, and get this, 6,720 donkeys.
6,720 donkeys. That paints a picture. It's a caravan.
It really was. The logistics must have been incredible. Helps you visualize the scale of it all.
Truly. It wasn't just a few pioneers. It was a significant relocation.
But even with that large number, the source reminds us again, it was still only a fraction of the total Jewish population in exile. Many stay behind.
That's important context. Okay, so this group of nearly 50,000 people, plus animals, they arrive in Jerusalem. They've made it. What's the first thing they do?
Well, one of the first things highlighted is that some leaders, the heads of the fathers' clans, were moved to give offerings.
Offerings? For what?
Specifically for rebuilding the temple, the house of God. And these were voluntary offerings.
Voluntary. Tell us more about that. What did they give?
They gave generously, according to their ability. The text mentions specific amounts given to the treasury for the work. 61,000 gold darkmonum.
61,000. How much gold is that, roughly?
The source estimates it's around 2/3 of a ton of gold.
Wow. That's staggering.
And 5,000 manum of silver, that's estimated at just over 3 tons of silver.
3 tons.
Plus 100 special tunics for the priests. So a huge infusion of resources right at the start.
And the key word there is voluntary, or free will, as the source calls it. What's the emphasis there?
The source really stresses this. It means it wasn't coerced. It was spontaneous, willing giving, prompted from within, potentially, as the source suggests, by the Holy Spirit moving their hearts.
So not like a fundraising campaign or pressure from the leaders.
Exactly. It contrasts with maybe situations today where giving might feel pressured or manipulated. This is presented as a genuine internal response.
That's a different model of resourcing God's work.
It is. And the source connected to a principle, even sharing a saying. If it's His will, it's His bill.
If it's His will, it's His bill. Simple, but profound. What's the idea behind that?
The idea is trust. If God intends for something to happen, He will ensure the resources are there. You rely on Him to provide, often by moving people's hearts to give willingly, like we see here.
So less about human striving and pushing, more about responding to divine prompting and provision.
That seems to be the lesson drawn from this spontaneous, generous giving. A real act of faith upon arrival.
A powerful start to the rebuilding effort. And how does the chapter wrap up after these offerings?
It concludes pretty simply. It states that the priests, the Levites, some of the people, the singers, the gatekeepers, the temple servants, they all settled in their designated towns. And it finishes, all Israel settled in their towns.
The return is complete. Phase 1 anyway, and they're starting to rebuild their lives and communities.
Exactly. The foundation is laid, literally and figuratively.
Okay, so let's pull it all together. We've gone through this dense chapter, names, numbers, exclusions, offerings, settling. What are the key takeaways for you, the listener, tuning in today? What relevance does Ezra 2 have now?
Well, first, I think, is that deeply personal point. God knows you by name. In a world where it's easy to feel like just one more person, a statistic, this reminds you of your individual value to Him.
That's incredibly grounding. What else?
Second, the focus on identity and service. It's not just about who you are, but also what you do. The source suggests God sees and values our contributions, our service, whatever form it takes. That gives purpose.
It validates our efforts, seeing them as part of something bigger. Good point.
Third, that whole idea of genuine voluntary giving, the free will offering. It challenges us maybe to think about our own motives when we give time, money, resources. Is it from the heart, a response to God, or from external pressure?
A check on the why behind our generosity. Important stuff. And the fourth.
That trust aspect. If it's His will, it's His bill. It's a call to rely on God's provision for the things He calls us to do, rather than just relying on our own frantic efforts or trying to force things.
Yeah, trusting He'll supply what's needed for His purposes.
So yeah, 4 big themes. Being known personally, the value of service, the heart of giving, and trusting in provision, all from a chapter that looks like just a list.
It really shows how much depth can be found when you, well, do a deep dive. Ezra 2 definitely offers more than meets the eye.
It certainly does. And maybe a final thought for you to mull over. Think about those who were excluded back then because they couldn't prove their lineage. And contrast that with the New Testament idea of believers having direct access, being part of a spiritual priesthood.
Okay.
What does that contrast highlight for you about what belonging and calling mean today? How has the basis shifted? Just something to think about.
That's a great question to ponder. What defines our access and our service now? Really makes you think.
Indeed.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Ezra chapter 2. It's been fascinating unpacking it.
My pleasure. Always good to explore these texts together.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep digging into the source.